Welcome to Proof of Culture. Proof of Culture is a podcast that's dedicated to exploring the dynamic and evolving world of culture in Web3. In each episode, we dive deep into the stories, strategies, and insights of the most influential figures in the space. Our goal is to provide listeners with in-depth knowledge and trends on the most fascinating people who are driving our culture forward. As always, I'm your host, Sean Morrison. I'm founder of The Blockchain and a passionate advocate for the amplification of BIPOC women and LGBTQ artists and entrepreneurs in Web3. Today's guest is AKA Stevey. She is the energetic force driving culture and community at Proof. Now, when you think of community builders in Web3, you cannot not think about AKA Stevey. She is a person that embodies the vibrancy, authenticity, and passion that typifies our world. She's bridging the gap between art enthusiasts and trading degens, and she's really carved out a unique identity in the space. In this conversation, we will talk about her early life and introduction to trading via GameStop and Reddit, how she fell in love with Web3, and how she became a community builder at Proof. I think that under Stevey's leadership, Proof has taken some pretty bold steps, not uncontroversial steps, but bold steps nonetheless, and she has steered the community through some controversial moves, such as releasing Moonbirds into the public domain, and the launch of the Moonbirds DAO. She's just played a really vital role in the entire Web3 ecosystem, and I am super excited to chat with her today. Through the conversation, you will see that she's kind of mastered the art of community building, but she keeps her finger on the pulse of cultural trends, and I find her to be a beacon in the tumultuous world of Web3 and NFTs. So here is my conversation with AKA Stevey. Enjoy. So, Stevey, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule, I know you have, to join me here today to just talk a little bit about you, how you entered this NFT space, and the work that you're doing, which I think is really, really important work. So please tell me how you made your way to Web3.
I love this question because I feel like everyone has such an interesting way that they got in here. I originally came in here chasing money a little bit, as a lot of people do. So I was on maternity leave, not getting paid, though I took like almost a year off, which is amazing, but it wasn't paid. And I was always sort of looking for little extra ways to make money. I got really into trading stocks and options. That was kind of my first kind of foray into trying to make some money.
Wait. How did someone just drop into stocks and options? Maybe share a little bit.
Okay.
That I'm intrigued.
Okay. So like my whole life, I'm Nigerian. It's important, I think, to have a good understanding of money because, to be fair, sometimes a lot of Nigerians aren't very good about saving and all of those things, right? So I'm an only child, but as an immigrant, I wanted to make sure that I set myself up right. So my first job that I could get a 401k, I started maxing it out or as much as I could. And that was always really kind of important to me. One of the things that I had done, I had some extra play money. I had invested in Tesla. I had a few shares, nothing crazy. There was a time around right before the pandemic started where I think there was a split, like a stock split, and the Tesla stock went kind of crazy. And it was nuts. And I was like, oh shit, damn, that just doubled, tripled, whatever. So I took that money and I was like, well, this is like a sort of house money now. Let me just see what else I could do. Yeah. That was around the same time of GameStop. That was all of that craziness. And I'd been on Reddit for like 10 years. I used it in almost every sort of important milestone of my life. And at that point, I was there for all the mom subreddits and all of that, kind of support that I would get online, especially during the pandemic and
Right.
in a new suburb, quiet suburb, all of those things. It was really helpful.
Mm.
But then I saw on the homepage this whole GameStop thing. And then I got sucked the hell in. So that kind of started my like little degen, like, that side of me kind of came through only because I had this extra money that I wasn't using. Everything else about me had been very like, I'm going to do everything right. I'm going to save properly, everything slowly and all of those things. But then I was like, I kind of came into a little bit of money. Let me just see what's going on.
I think it's interesting that you dove in because I saw all of that happening and I was just like passive watching going,
Yeah.
you know how when you go when you're when they're doing double dutch and you're like this, oh, there you go. That was me. And I never actually took leap to get into the whole GameStop race. So what was it that really drew you in? Was it just that you had some extra money or what was it about that really just sucked you in?
I mean, like, honestly, having a kid going through the pandemic, there's all this sort of uncertainty. I think I really had like an emotional, like, readjustment. All the crazy hormones, all of the like, all the just postpartum craziness. I think that there was something that I honestly feel like it was a little bit of a little mental break that was like, why not? Right? Because everything about me is so, I thought I could plan everything out. And then for the first time in my life, having a kid gave me this sort of vision of you cannot plan anything. You have to just kind of go with the flow a little bit. I've just welcomed a lot of chaos into my life with this baby. Like, why not a little bit more, right? Or why not or my whole life is around this kid now. Why not have a little something for myself? Why not do just a little dopamine rush in a different way, right? Like a little bit. Like I'm going to be honest. And when I think about everybody who's here in Web3, I'm like, we're all crazy. I think we're all a little bit insane because it is a wild space, how quickly it moves and how kind of silly it all seems sometimes. And you zoom out, you're like, what are we doing here?
What are we doing?
What are we doing? Right. So I think I was just in a cool, interesting place to kind of accept that a little bit. And then just, I think, this is one of the reasons what made me really, really bullish on community is that, again, I've been on Reddit for over 10 years. It is what kind of got me through everything. The information that I could learn and soak up was so huge. And I actually ended up finding just like this tiny group and to do like a private subreddit that really kind of taught me everything that I needed to know about stocks and options and all of that stuff. And so I don't think that I would be there without the fact that I had to find some people who kind of accepted me and helped me and like learn everything that I needed to learn because it felt really overwhelming. I had a little bit of experience. So there was like the Doges and the Robin Hoods and like a little bit of that, but nothing really crazy. But they really kind of helped me learn it all. And then I was off and running. Like GameStop was insane. And then from then on, it was more options trading. Then we moved over to shitcoins. There's shitcoin summer in 2021. Just, oh my God, it was insane. It was just absolutely insane, but it was so much fun. And it was an opportunity to feel something different other than I'm a new mom and I'm tired as hell, right?
There's an interesting way that you handled that because there's a completely other school of thought that would be like, okay, I'm a mom now. It's time to buckle down. It's time to for the future. And you were like, I'm going to the wind. I'm going big, which is interesting, I think. The other thing I'll touch on that you mentioned was Reddit, because, as one of the oldest communities on the web, and when the whole pandemic came about and, the whole the loans that the government were giving out, I had no understanding of that. And where did I learn about like what I could qualify for, how to fill out the applications, all of that? Reddit. And like, it was like in one of those groups, I met an accountant, and he was so gracious and so helpful. And I was like, should I pay you? He was like, no, just pay it forward. When you learn, you somebody else and I was like, that is the core of this community we talk about so much in web. And I'm going to touch on that, but it's interesting that that's where you sort of got the the beginnings of it. And I think that's why
Yeah.
Reddit's doing really amazing work in terms, and I know they're tapping into Web3. We're going to touch on that a little later, but yeah, I just wanted to point that out because whatever's happening organically, I think on Reddit is something that we would love to replicate. A lot of the projects in Web3 would love to replicate because it is
Yes.
organic, the way that community evolves there. I think it's something
Yeah.
to really pay attention to and to learn from. Um,
I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think that it's a lot harder, I think, to capture someone's attention when it is money, like when it's based on, the value of whatever your key is to get into
Sure.
that community, right?
Yeah.
And that's the harder part. But I think there's something really, really pure about just helping each other. Like I met my best friend through the Reddit, the subreddit. Like we were both DGen moms in LA with kids, within a year of each other. And that kind of helped us kind of go through and get through these last few years. Right. So I think that there's something really awesome about that when I finally got into Web3, because I went stocks and options and then shit coins. And then I was like, if I'm trading shit coins, I might as well try this NFT thing that my friends are doing. And when I got in there, I didn't really see the point of it until there was like this meta of community. There was like all those like cute PFPs and cool cats. There was, the crypto Morties. There was like all
yeah.
of these, cute things that were just doing it from the power of community. Like little lemon friends just pumped over one ETH just because people liked it and they felt something there. And that's where it clicked for me. I'm like, I can see so many parallels to all these other things that I've done in my life. Like professionally, I worked for city governments. So in Los Angeles here, there's a bunch of little cities and I had been doing that my whole life. And there's also something about the community of the tiny city that you live in and the kind of people that are engaged and how you engage with them and how you make them feel, really kind of part of something bigger. And then when I saw this happening in NFTs, I was like, this is how this can actually last for a long time. Because when you see that power of community, you've seen it, I've seen it, like the kind of life-changing relationships that you can make. It's important for us to nurture this. And that's where it was like, okay, if I could ever do anything in Web3, it would be something around this.
Nice, nice. Let me step back a little bit.
Yeah.
AKA Stevey, that's what you're known as. Far and wide
Yes.
NFT space on NFT Twitter. Where did that name come from? How did you choose that?
So I had a main account on Reddit. That was my mom account. That was my nice girl account. And then when I started getting really into like shit coins and trading and all that stuff, I was like, I don't know if I want my mom friends to see that I'm doing this. Right. So let me just pull up one of my old burner accounts. So I had this burner account called I Love Steve Smith. And that was from college. It was a long time ago. And I was just like kind of looking through my accounts of like, okay, which one could I use as my burner account? I just randomly picked it. I didn't know that I was going to get so deeply entrenched in these communities.
Yeah.
We had doxed, we had met people, we had done all this stuff. And, I think, okay, step one, most of the usernames that I've ever used, especially online, it's not obvious that I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, especially when it comes to trading and all of that stuff, it always like, whenever you see a woman in those spaces, like they would belittle them, right? And so for a long time, people didn't know that I was a woman because my username was I Love Steve Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, I started getting to build those relationships and everyone knew that I was a woman and they're like, what do we call you? We can't call you Steve. We can't call you Steve Smith. I Love Steve Smith is too long. Let's just call you Steve. And that's just what happened.
Wow.
And then again, like I used that username to get into Web3. And when I was thinking about an ENS name, Stevie.eth was taken. And then a friend just suggested, how about AKA? And then that was that. I didn't even think about it that much.
Right.
And now that, I have this like, I don't know, persona or this person, it's just really funny to me that I have to kind of go by that. I also think it's really funny because Stevie was my DGen. I can say whatever I want, be whoever I want. It was my alter ego from this nice buttoned up mom. Mm-hmm. And then because it's now my identity in Web3 and because I now work for Proof, it's kind of real. It like Stevie isn't fun anymore. Stevie is more. I kind of hate that, but it's fine. It's fine.
I didn't know either. I knew the handle, of course, but I did not know who was behind the handle. And I certainly didn't know if you were Black, white, male, or female until we got into the group. And then I was like, oh, okay. It was a relief. I will say that. You were head of culture and community at Proof.
Yes.
Tell us what it is and tell us what that means in terms of your role and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so Proof is a larger kind of company that encompasses a few different NFT communities. One is the Proof Collective, which is like the oldest one. Shortly after the Proof Collective launched, we launched Moonbirds. And right now we are actually launching the Moonbirds Mythics collection, which is like the second, almost like the mutants style of Moonbirds, right? So this is the sort of second tier Moonbirds collection. The Proof Collective is 1,000 people. The Moonbirds is 10,000. And so this was a slow sort of expansion of our community. Everything that we're all about is about, appreciating art, especially the humanity behind it. We have an incredible media team that really helps us tell those stories. We want to try to build a website and a UX experience that really allows you to really appreciate the art. Things that we do with our community and try to engage with them is really kind of all about that. We just opened an IRL location. It's like a little pop-up location for the next 6 months in Los Angeles that allows us to have gallery exhibitions and meetups and, just more opportunities for people to actually really kind of engage, because I think this idea of being the conduit for collectors to really engage with an artist and get to know them a little bit more, I think is super, super important. That sort of emotional connection that you have with an artist really helps signal to the rest of the world what you are about, what artists to really kind of pay attention to. And so I do think that the sort of flywheel and the combination of artists, our community and media, it can be a really, really powerful one.
Proof of Culture is brought to you in part by Zora, the place to bring your imagination on chain. Visit Zora.co to get started. Connect, click, create. And now, back to our interview. Why is culture critical to your role, and how do you create culture within the larger Proof community?
So my role, it is a little bit of a catch-all term for everything. So this concept of being a community manager, it is where I started, but it's kind of grown. I think right now what I'm really doing is making sure that not only are we managing our community, but we're also building the tools that our community would want us to build, right? And trying to set what that culture is. And so we've gone through a number of different journeys to try to get where we want to go. And, a few months ago, we announced that Moonbirds are the art collectors PFP. So for me, one of the things that I want to try to always make sure that we do is that culture of bringing humanity into art, and really sort of appreciating the act of collecting and appreciating the artist itself, I think is always really important. And so part of my goal in that culture is to continue to encourage this concept of bringing humanity into everything that we do. A lot of us are from Web2. A lot of us are just sort of product builders. We have a lot of really big brain people who are just ready to get everything done and done well. And there's that. But we need to also bring some heart. We need to bring some culture. We need to bring the realness of it all. And I think that is my goal, is to try to kind of bring the warmth of what it would be to have an exceptionally built product or website or UX or whatever, but also bring that heart and humanity into it.
When I hear that, I love it, because a big part of my goal is to bring more collectors into the space. I think that I've harbored dreams of opening a gallery for as long as I can remember, and have friends that are artists. And what I like to say about Web3 is that the art world out there is literally a white box. And I think it's a white box for a reason. It's a white box literally, but also metaphorically. And I think it, perhaps by design or maybe not, it keeps people out. For whatever reason, people don't feel like it's accessible. And I find that what this space has done for me, and what I think it can do for so many other people, is to make art accessible. So I know the Grails program, which I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, but if you can't afford a Grails, like if you can't afford one of those, there are so many different levels at which you can enter into this space and collect beautiful art. And that's the message I'm trying to get across to people, is that you can be a collector. Like you literally can sit on your computer and collect art and support artists in a whole new and innovative way. So when I hear that, it makes me excited that that is sort of your remit as head of culture and community at Proof. Talk to me about some of the things that you're doing to do that. I love when you say like bringing heart to it, because I think that there's a lot about this space that reinforces distance. It's not intuitive. You can't pick it up very easily. I think there are some things about the technology that makes the barrier to entry a little hard. But when you say you're trying to bring heart into it, I would just love for you to expand a little bit on that and tell me what that means.
Sure. So I would consider my role to be almost like the voice of the community, right? So you have Kevin and Justin, who are the co-founders of this project. Not all of them can be here on the day-to-day in the trenches, kind of reading and hearing what's going on in the community and what we're doing. A lot of them they're visionaries. My role is to be that person that understands what's going on in the community and tries to take it back to the team and see what we can do with it. So my whole page is almost, a Proof Maxi page. If I see somebody doing something amazing, I'm retweeting. Like as my reach or whatever kind of increases, I hope to be that beacon for people and somebody that can be a really good resource to try to get that information out. There's a few things that I really try to champion for, especially when it comes to the Moonbird community. Number one is like with the Diamond exhibition, I was so excited about that because the Diamond exhibition was something that you could get if you've been holding for a while, a Moonbird. You can get a pass that allows you to now collect really awesome art. So very similar to the Grails project, but now it is more accessible for everybody. Really trying to highlight that program, trying to find ways that we can continue having more people collect, I think is really important. One of the things that we just started releasing now is called Signal. It's a weekly update, like video and newsletter. We not only give everyone updates about what Proof is doing, but now what people in our community is doing. So now here's this opportunity to use our media side and our arm to also kind of lift up some of the smaller artists or some of the amazing community members that are doing stuff that reinforces all the things that we want to see in our community, right? So finding other ways, again, to bring our community, any community artists into the bigger, larger picture of what we're doing, I think is really, really important. So we have the Foundry, this IRL location. How can we if you're a community artist who's been in the community for a while and you've never had, your art in a gallery before, here's this opportunity that you can do that and have the entire community support you under this larger umbrella of these are our community artists.
Yeah.
Just getting them more exposure, getting them, again, through the media side, IRL side, like who's out there who wants to do their own merch? How can we host that into it, right? I'm just always trying to be that bridge between the community and the team and everything that we're doing.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And believe you me, I know how hard that is, because your community is quite large, and I'm sure that there are different factions and everybody wants to be heard. So however you're managing to do that, good luck.
Thank you. I have this I love my community, especially because we do so many events. I get to see them in real life and hear how, we're impacting them. So a couple of weeks ago, we had an offsite and they knew that we were all going to get together to prep for the launch of Mythics, and that we were super stressed out and, things had been kind of crazy in the market and blah, blah, blah. And a few of them just took the time out to record a little video to just say thank you for all the things that we've exposed them to and in their time here. And it just of course I cried. Of course it was touched because, there's 10,000 people you have to worry about. Maybe you won't reach every single one, but I know that there are dozens of people that I know that we've had a real impact on, in the same way of that person that you emailed, right? Like sometimes it's just, it's not something that can be scalable, but I think it's so important because you never know what one person's life can change. And there's nothing to be dismissive about, like that is incredibly powerful, right? And we have a long time. Who knows what will happen over, years and years and years. But I think that that's super important, that you're a real person, and I want people to see that, So yeah.
How do you deal with, because you are ostensibly on the front lines? I mean, for better or for worse, it's all coming to you. And then it is your role to sort of parse through that and then bring that back to the larger organization. How do you deal with criticism? I think Web3 has elevated the need for a community. And I always say in interviews that the communities in Web3 are entitled in a way that I've never seen. Unbelievable. And I think that it's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I think particularly for the folks that are coming into the space where they're used to having a one-way conversation with their customer, Web3 demands a two-way conversation. But there is that air of when they're not happy with something, oof, you're going to hear it. And it's been a bit of a bumpy ride for y'all. How do you deal personally? How do you deal with the criticism? Because you're hearing it, I think, a lot louder than a lot of people.
I will say I am lucky enough that my 10 years in government has really kind of prepared me for that, because unlike Web2, this idea of government and the entitlement that people have because they, own a home in some city, you feel that a lot, right? You have to make sure that they feel heard as well. It's different in that, if you bought the house, what are you going to do? You're not going to sell the house because somebody didn't get back to you. But there is also that sort of sense of entitlement, right? So I've already kind of been used to this concept of how do you communicate with somebody when they're really angry, they really feel some sort of passion in one way or the other.
Yeah.
But I think understanding that first impression means everything. I think that's one of the things that I've learned the most, like understanding how people, they play telephone, right? Like there's one thing that happened and now this is just who this person is. So I always try to think about the things that we're doing now. What is the one-liner piece of FUD that we could potentially get? And starting to think about it that way is really kind of helped us cross the T's, dot our I's, all of that. There are certain days that it really kind of hits me really, really hard, for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm really lucky in that we are here in the office. It's really nice to be able to just like turn around and talk to other people and just sort of reinvigorate what it is that you're doing here, and understanding that a lot of the times people just don't have that context. So sometimes I will give them the context. Sometimes I'll just sort of let it go. It's really hard to also, especially when it comes to Twitter, what is their motivation to do this? Is it more views? Is it whatever? I don't know. But I think what we can do really is just prove ourselves through the things that we're doing. And I'm really, really proud of everything that we've done with Mythics, because this was an opportunity to just pull it all back and be like, we know this isn't necessarily a good time to be dropping something like this, but we are working so fucking hard on this. We want you guys to see how hard we've worked on it and the heart behind this collection, so that you guys can really feel it. And I think in doing that and communicating that with everybody, it has kind of made Mythics a little FUD proof. Like you can't really FUD it. It was a free drop, the art is incredible. Everything about the experience is amazing. And I think that over time we will kind of prove its value to the rest of the world, but it's not anything that's like as crazy as Moonbirds was. So I think that we can just keep learning, keep communicating, and being honest and transparent. And once we're comfortable with that, like whatever the haters, whatever the FUD says, as long as it doesn't feel like there's an ounce of truth, it doesn't hurt me. Sometimes when it does, that's where I'm like, we have to do better next time.
Right. Switching gears just a little bit.
Sure.
Web3 is notoriously male, very white, not as diverse as some of us would like. I'm curious how you manage being a Black woman. I've been there. I know you're in the thick of it. How do you manage to navigate this very white, very male world and still keep your presence about you and all of that?
I'm used to it. Like I said, I had 10 years of Reddit. I grew up in the suburbs here in LA. Like I've been used to only being the one, Black person or the one woman in a lot of these spaces.
The only, yeah.
In college, the only, yeah. In college, in high school, I worked at Best Buy, right? Like I was like always kind of nerdy and like always kind of around white dudes, right? Like I'm okay I'm okay with that. But I will say, as I've gotten older, it's been really, really awesome when you do see other people who look like you to really connect with that, right? So when I met you and when I saw that you and I were on the same page in a number of different ways, it made me so happy. Like I was like, you're somebody that I want to look up to, that I want to talk to about what it's like to be in the space. You know, I'm lucky that here at Proof, actually, there's like, I mean, we're not counting or anything, but there's like 4 or 5 Black people here.
Right.
Well, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Janet is over here right now. She's incredible. She's actually another African woman here.
Yes.
She's on the art team. She's here from London. She's crushing it. We've got Sadiq, who is the Moonbirds project manager. He's incredible. We've got Nick and Luke in the back as engineers. They're amazing. And I feel like it feels good, you know?
Yeah.
And not only that, but we have other people of color too, right? Here in this place. So it does feel really, really unique in that way. You know, one of the people that I just love, Ed Balloon, he is one of our artists. He's here in LA. He comes to every meeting, every one of our events. He's also Nigerian. He's a little younger. We ended up going to the same college I had no idea. We went to the same college in Boston. He was a couple of years below me, so we just never saw each other. But like, we just like randomly said that. And then like now, he's like my little brother, right? Like we joke, he texts me about like some of the crazy shit, you know, about what the crazy white people are doing. And I just love, I love that. I love having a couple of people that I can always kind of come to. And my best friend that I met on Reddit, you know, she's Indian. Like it's great to have people of color around me, but also know that I can handle this other world and that's okay, right? My husband is white. My kid is mixed. I want this world to be like, I want it to be okay. To also be proud of who you are and have that be a benefit, right? Like this other points of views, I think is super important. I'm used to it and I'm lucky that I'm used to it. I think it's been an incredibly valuable thing to just feel comfortable being the only person in a room that looks like you. But I want us to have more of that because I want to not only feel comfortable, but I also want to feel like empowered. I want to feel, I don't want it to be a thing where, oh my God, it's a surprise that I feel comfortable here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that we could definitely do more to encourage different types of people, different points of views here in Web3 for sure.
Yeah. How do you think, I mean, honestly, I did not know that the Proof team was that diverse. I'm aware that Janet had just came on board, but I literally thought it was just you two. And it warms me to hear that, you know, it's a diverse team, and kudos to Kevin and Justin for building that into the DNA of the organization. What do you think having a diverse team does for the culture of the organization?
I think, you know, it's so funny because not only do we have a bunch of physically diverse, but also where they live, right? So we have some people in Hong Kong, we have in Europe, we have all these other places, right? And I think one of the first easiest things was this concept of Web3 needs to be international. We need to be thinking about the times or the places or the things that we do. If we ever do anything IRL, that we need to be conscious of all of that.
Yeah.
I think that was like the easiest one of like, oh yeah, this place is this is a global world. I think it also sort of helps us. It's an easy one, obviously, when we think about the artists that we bring on, that we want to be as diverse as possible. But that's always been from day one, like something that has been really, really important to us. One of the things that I actually really noticed is like when Frank from D-Gods like doxed and showed himself that he was a brown person, how many people really felt that sort of connection to it. And I think that in order for us to bring more people in, you have to understand that it needs to be diverse, or else they're not necessarily going to want to come in, or they don't know if they're going to feel comfortable there. Right? I feel like in our community, I do feel like it's fairly diverse than others. There's more women than most other communities. There's other, you know, people of color, and I don't think that it ever feels really stuffy or overly one thing or another. And I think that is kind of comes in from everything that we've done to hire, and then the artists and like all of that stuff, I think is just important. But I think ultimately the global aspect of it is probably the thing that we're most focused on is like, that is one of our real tenets, is like trying to make this as much of a global project as possible.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is true. I've often said amongst friends that, certain Web3 communities would be like, oh, we're all about diversity. And you go into their Discord and it's like inceltopia. It's like, what is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
it's one thing on Twitter, but then when you get in, it's just kind of like, this is not it. So I think that you would agree that it takes intention to really
Yes.
build that diverse community that you are working on. It doesn't just happen. And if you don't intentionally set out to do it and do those things every day that contribute to that, you can very well go a different way. So kudos to you. Proof is great. Love all that, but you have a bigger job. As you mentioned, you're a mom. How do you juggle that? I don't know how old your son is. So how are you juggling motherhood and the juggernaut that's Web3 as well? You seem to do it very well, by the way, but
Oh, no, man, it's not easy. It's not easy. That is always like the constant source of guilt for me. I think it's really important to set those boundaries, and sometimes I can't.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's so silly, where I'm in the middle of some like argument or some fun fest, and my son is ready to put his shoes on to go to school, and I have to stop and do this. Like, I'm really, really lucky that I have a supportive husband. He works at Amazon, but when he first started working there, it was insane. I was the supportive one and like the chiller job, and he was in like the more high risk, super busy, travel, like heavy job. And I was there to support him. And since the pandemic slowed down, because the pandemic and Amazon just like was not fun. So he's like decided that he wants to slow down. He loves being a dad. He's the best dad ever. They're best friends. And he's letting me fly because he understands that I'm kind of going through this thing and I want to explore this and see what happens.
yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, I cannot believe I was in a cubicle in a government job for 10 years. Like, I cannot believe this, but I'm having so much more fun being more impactful here. So he's there to be supportive. My mom is here to be supportive. And my son is just like a really happy-go-lucky kid. And it's so fun to be around him. And so I think it works out, but it's not easy, I will say. Not easy.
So you mentioned at the top of the hour that you're Nigerian. Are you first generation, or were you born in Nigeria, or
I was born there, yes. I was
born there? Wow. Okay.
Yes.
I like to say that culture is America's number one export, right? I've lived in London and in Berlin. I've been all over. And the one thing that this country has is culture that we export everywhere else, is music, fashion, all of that. And what I'm starting to see here in the US is this blending, particularly of African culture, particularly in the music, with the Afrobeat. And there's a part of me that feels like, okay, you're first or second generation, you just start to assimilate, but you bring your culture with you. And I think that what I'm seeing happening currently is this beautiful meshing of all of these first and second generation kids whose parents, whether they're from the West Indies or Africa or whatever, it's all just coming together, and it's really reshaping American culture.
Yes.
Talk to me about that from where you're sitting and what you're seeing.
Not a Web3, just like in general.
Just in general. Yeah, just in general.
I mean, especially when I was going to have, a son that was going to be mixed race, I thought, what is that going to be like?
Yeah.
Right. But I know that there is this whole new generation of people who are going to be mixing those cultures, and for that to be okay. And for that to be celebrated, and for that to be a superpower. And I think for me, it's always so important for me to try to impart as much of my culture and my husband's culture. He's like second generation Polish and Ukrainian. And so for Christmas, we always do all the traditional stuff on both sides. And we try to do that. For our wedding, we had both of our cultures, enmeshed in that, is his middle name and my son's middle name, which is, a Nigerian name.
Yeah.
It's really important for me to do that. I think when it comes to my public persona, I want to do more of that. I think it's actually really wild how many Nigerians there are in Web3. And there is this other side of Web3 and African Web3 that I have not tapped into. And I think it's super important.
It's huge.
It's huge.
To be quite honest, a lot of the work coming out of the continent is just fire. Like I just,
Yeah.
and yeah, incredible work. I love that because I've been friends with Vintage Mozart for a long time, and he's run the African NFT community for quite some time.
Yeah.
So,
And then there's Chica too, right?
yes.
Chica with Afropolitan.
And there's a whole contingent of Caribbean artists as well that are doing incredible work. And so it's just wonderful to see all of that come to the fore. If you're looking from the outside in, well, now I'm speaking about Web3, you wouldn't know. That's part of why I created the blockchain, was to really push some of that art by diverse artists, not just Black Americans, but Caribbeans and Africans and women and queer folks and everybody else who are here who may not get that opportunity. But I wonder what you see it does for the space to have this amazing work by diverse artists just now coming to the fore. What do you think it does for Web3?
I think it's so important. I have another friend, Rahul Iyer, who just dropped something on Art Blocks, right? And he DM'd me and he was like, I'm trying to create this group of people who are people of color who are collectors of generative art. That doesn't happen that often. That, for whatever reason, seems to be quite gatekept, right? Like, I think, I don't know why that is, but Finger Codes and Culture piece collection is one of my top 3 favorite gen art pieces ever, because I think there's something really amazing when you bring culture and generative art together. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
There's a lot that you can do with that. And so that collection, Layers collection, it's called Semblance. It's about the 2 sides of your 2 cultures. And then, art, Ed's prohibition.art drop, right? I think that there's something really kind of amazing about when you do see that breakout, especially in some sort of format that one culture tends, I feel like it's mostly white people who are really into generative art, right? So when I see that sort of breakout, I'm like, this is amazing, because it's forcing people to slow down and be like, oh, do you like the art? Yeah, you do? Well, there's something really quite obvious here, that it's showing some sort of cultural relevance. You're forced to learn a little bit more about it. Emily She does a really great job with that too, of like really bringing her culture in. And it's from a economic standpoint, it works. It does well. People want to see art. People want to see like something. Culture is what sets you apart. It can be what sets you apart from other people. It can be the thing that makes you uniquely you, or a group of people uniquely them, right? And I think if you want to make money, I think it's a really easy way. It's a good way to try to bring people in, because I think that that's another element of emotion that you can do on a JPEG, which is really difficult to do. And I think, why not use that part of your culture or the things that you've learned to reflect that in your art, and to feel a little bit more, for the art to feel more unique to yourself, I guess, right? To be more real. And I think that that's really important. And I want to see more of that, to be honest.
Yeah. You unwittingly answered the last question, which is, what does no, I'm going to let you off the hook, because you've got to go. But thank you so much, Amanda, taking time out of your busy day to share your views. I will be in touch, but thank you so much. Really can't thank you enough. That was my conversation with AKA Stevey, also known as Amanda. I would like to thank her for joining me today to share her insights on the space in general, her experience in community building. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I think that it is important to see people like Stevey in the space. Whether or not we agree with what they're doing, it's just really important that we have people like her who have differing points of view in this space. Thank you all for listening, for tuning into this episode of Proof of Culture. Your support and engagement are what really drives us to bring you these conversations. If you enjoyed the episode, subscribe to the podcast and our newsletters, and share it with those who you think might find it valuable. For the latest in NFT news, educational content, and more episodes like this, visit the blockchain, www.theblockchain.com. theblkchain.com, and join our mission to empower artists, collectors, and entrepreneurs in Web3. This is Sean. I'm signing off. Proof of Culture. Stay innovative, stay creative, and most importantly, stay true to your vision. Until next time.